Welcome everyone. Some of you asked me if I could do a video about rendering an urban master plan in Photoshop, and now here it is. I exported some line work which I drew in Archicad into Photoshop, which is the base of the rendering, and it's a fictional city or whatever. I just drew some lines in a couple of minutes. It's not an existing spot. When you are rendering these plans, there are thousands of different styles which you can use. Some people like it very simple, keep it flat, and other people like it super realistic. I'm more on the realistic side, but sometimes I even like the very simple ones, but I more use them for diagrams, I think. And if you're rendering these like I do, without any textures added in your cut program, in Archicad or whatever you use, then it's all about the textures. And these are the most important things in a landscape rendering or in an urban plan rendering. So I imagine that this should be a river, and we have some streets and buildings here and a little bit of green in between and some pavements. And yeah, let's start with adding textures. It's quite simple. I will begin with the buildings, which I want actually to be white. So we create a new layer. I'm using the shortcuts, by the way, Shift, Control, Alt and N for a new layer, and I call it building. I like to work with colors in Photoshop layers, so I can keep an overview. It's better for me to work with it, and I make the buildings yellow. So the landscape is my base, most important thing in here. Most important color is maybe red. I go on the landscape layer. I press W for the magic wand, and I select all the areas which are supposed to be the buildings. Should be all of it. Now maybe these corners. And now I go back into my building layer and I fill it with a color. Actually, I want them to be white at the end. They are white right now, but I fill them with white. So I have pixels laying on these layers or on the spot where the buildings are. Maybe I can use it later, maybe not. Maybe this was in vain. We will see. After this, I probably start with everything which is not a street and which is not green. These are the pavements and all the areas in between, and I will use some kind of plaster for it. So here's my textures collection. I hope I have some good textures that fit. Yeah, maybe I take these. This texture is very small, not the resolution. The resolution is good, but it shows a very small image of what we want to create at the end. So I have to duplicate the layers. I think it's seamless, and I have to create a really big texture. To make this, I press Ctrl and J for duplicating, then I press on V, and if I hold Shift down, I can move the whole layer in one direction. I can use it, I can move it this way too, but I start with this direction. Okay, it's a little bit seamless. This is unrealistic, but it will be so small that no one would recognize it, so it's okay for me. I merge these two layers together. I select them and I press Ctrl and E to merge them together, and now I press Ctrl and J again to duplicate the new layer, and I do this all the time. Now I have a big row, merge it together, and now I start putting it down, merging together, putting it down, merging and duplicating. I press Ctrl and T for transforming to make it even smaller, because as you can see, this is a parking spot, so this is almost 2.5 meters, and this is maybe 4.5 meters, and these stones are way too big. So this is kind of more realistic. And I do the same thing again. The texture has to be as tall as the whole image, because there is this kind of texture in the whole image, and I simply will lay it in a specified direction over the whole image, and then I will cut out the parts where the texture should not be. Can do this with a mask, but I also can erase these parts because I don't need them anymore after I'm finished. So I can work quite destructive and not constructive. I will lower the opacity a little bit to give it the direction I wanted to, and I press Ctrl T, and now if you're going with the mouse cursor over these edges, you see these little arrows, and you are able to turn it, and this looks quite good for me. It will have the same direction as the big street here and the river, and I will put it somewhere here. And now I have the opportunity to just scale it up again, so the little stones will be quite more unrealistic, or I can duplicate it again, but I think I scale it up and watch how it looks like. Oh, I hate this. I hate when Photoshop does this. Yeah, it's not very good, to admit, but I'm fine with it because the texture is very small. There are not so many areas where the texture will be seen, and of course we will do some magic after we just added the textures. It's not all about adding them. That's quite easy. Everyone could do this. It's more about editing all the textures to create a new composition which fits very good together. So I just select all the areas where the new texture should be, and I have to think wisely. That's more than I expected. But that's it, I hope. No, this area too. Yeah, this should be all. And because I know I won't use the texture or the rest of the texture anymore. I just can erase all the rest in this case. I go back on my texture, and because I have selected all the parts where it should be, I have to invert my selection. For this I can press Ctrl Shift and I. And now I simply press on delete to delete all the rest. Yeah, these lines aren't good. Maybe I can... Yeah, maybe I will fix some of these lines which Photoshop created when I merged all the layers together. Especially in this area, but I will see. Let's just add all the textures and then we can see what we can do or what we will do. Okay, and now I see that it wasn't a good idea to erase all the textures because I forgot the parking spots over here. But that's okay. Okay, we just call it... I just call it pavement because all of the area is determined to be for the people which are going by foot. There are ways for the cyclists, for the bike riders. There are streets for the cars, and there are the pavements. And I make it gray because it's gray. And I will go on with the next texture. In this case, it will be the grass, I think. Doesn't matter. It's quite hard to find good textures. I always use this texture if I'm rendering a landscape plan with a very high outzoom. When it's 1/2000 or even more, I use these kind of textures. I have different textures if it's closer, or I'm using different textures. And this texture doesn't look very good, so I will put this over it, over the other texture, and I have to rasterize it so I can edit it. And now I have more options. I can use the mask and just fade out the edge, but I can also take the eraser tool, shortcut is E, and I press on 3 to make the opacity 30%. And I make it a little bit bigger and I go over the edges. This was too much. Redo it. Now it's a little bit more smooth and I will merge them together. But I don't like that this pattern repeats over here. So I press S for the clone stamp. Press Alt for taking this area and I just go over it. Randomizing the texture a little bit. Okay, let's move on. I'll do the same thing again here because of this very attracting thing in the texture. When you zoom out, you will see this first. And then you recognize, okay, it's here and it's here. But on the other way, there is not much grass on the plan. So, okay, I will merge them together. Saves time. Okay, but in this case, I overlay it again. Press E and smooth the edges. So the edge won't be very harsh. In this case, same thing here. Merge them together. Yeah, that's okay. For this, in this case, it's okay. In other plans I would not have taken this texture because it doesn't look very good, but we can use it here because, like I said, the grass isn't very dominant in this one. So it's okay. Yeah, we'll have grass here. We'll have grass here and here and here and here on the parking spots, and of course everywhere in the middle of the buildings. But I think that's it. Yeah. Okay, I go back. I press Shift, Control and I to invert, and then I delete it again. I'm not working with a mask here because why should I if I know there is no other place with grass in here? I call it grass and I make it green. Quite simple. Next thing will probably be the water, which is quite difficult, I have to admit. If you go, for example, on Google Maps and you look at rivers, some of them are very gray, some of them have a little bit blue in it, but most of them actually have a lot of green in it. And it's very hard to find a texture for a river. It's more easy to find textures for lakes or for an actual sea, but not for a river. And I think I'll have to work with several textures here. And I will start with this one. I like the gradient. It's going to get darker in the middle of the river. That's quite realistic because where the river isn't that low, the color is a little bit brighter. And I select the river and again invert and delete. I'm absolutely not satisfied, but let's go on with adding some other textures to fill the picture with all the textures. And after that we start editing all the layers and all the textures. We go on with the streets. So I need some asphalt textures, and they are quite difficult to find and also quite difficult to edit and add into your building, into your rendering, into your Photoshop file, because obviously you cannot put them into any direction or create a big texture and put it over the whole image like I did with the plaster. You always have to align it to the actual streets to make it look realistic. So I will put the turning point over here, go onto this edge, and I will turn it hopefully exactly. That doesn't work very good, to admit. Maybe it's better here. Yeah, I think that's okay. No, a little bit more like this. And I just stretch it. And yeah, I think that's okay. For me, I delete all the edges. I select the streets on my ground layer, base layer, landscape layer, whatever. I rasterize the asphalt layer, I invert the selection, and I delete everything else. Yeah, now I recognize that I have a bicycle lane over here. So I'm going back, press Ctrl and T, and now I made things difficult. I have to stretch it. I put the opacity a little bit down to see better what I'm doing. I want to have the two white lines on the street. Don't want to have them deleted because they make, or they create a little bit more realism. Yeah, that's okay. I don't like this edge. Now I will do it with a clone stamp. Okay. Again, select the streets. Control Shift and I, delete. I'm on the wrong layer. Okay. I will merge all the streets together if I'm finished, but right now I still have to add some more streets. This one, this one, this one, and I don't exactly know what I'm doing here. I think it will, yeah, I think I will add the same texture as on the bicycle lanes. I thought about a red one or a reddish one. We will see. Okay. Same procedure. Lower capacity a little bit. The angle has to be right. I think this fits quite well. Opacity up to 100 again. Selecting the streets and deleting everything. Same thing over here, and then I'm done with the asphalt. Don't know what this is, to be honest, but I say this is a building, and now it is a building. Maybe it is really supposed to be a building. Like I told you, I drew this in a couple of minutes. Just wanted to have all the different stuff you could probably have in one of these images or renderings. Wanted to have the river, I wanted to have streets, I wanted to have bicycle lanes, pavements, parking spots, grass, and buildings, of course. And if we are finished with the textures, the worst thing of it all would come at the end. And I mean the trees. They could take the most time in creating a rendering like this. They don't have to, but most times they do. But I can show you some quite cool tricks to make it a little bit faster. Okay, same thing here. No. There's the cycling way. A little bit more. Yeah, that's okay. That's not okay. Yeah, I'm turning around. Doing the same thing again and again. I will leave it like this. Now we'll work with the clone stamp here. No problem. On the junctions I have to work with the clone stamp. So it doesn't matter if I have to add a little bit of it here. Okay, put the opacity up again. And oh, the last street. Maybe I'm not working with this texture. I try this one. Don't know if it will look decent or not. I will see. So if you're working with textures, you don't need to be afraid of using textures where you think, in the first case, oh my god, this doesn't fit to the rest of the image. Especially not when it comes down to colors. Because you can edit colors and saturation and brightness and stuff like this so easy in Photoshop. So if you like a texture, but something like color or brightness or anything else doesn't fit, just add it to the picture or to the image, to the PSD file, and I will show you some ways to work with it. Okay, this one is a little bit brighter than the rest. And just like I said, I have to edit it, the brightness. I use the brightness filter. Make sure that I use it only on this layer, and I will put the brightness a little bit down. I think that's okay. And now I take all the streets, even the correction layer, the filter, and I merge them to one. And these are my streets. And streets are also gray. The lake, by the way, is blue. Oh, it's a river, not a lake. Yeah, and I have to do a little bit of beauty correction on the junctions. Okay, I go on the landscape layer and I use the magic wand to select the area where I'm working in. So I don't want to go over the edges here. I go back to the streets layer and I press S for the clone stamp. Make it a little bit smaller. Don't use it with 100%. I think 65 maybe is okay. And I start stamping. Let's see where we go. I don't know yet. I try to put the gray from here to the edges. Also over here. Which doesn't look that great. Put a little bit more of the second texture in here. And what I do right now is I will add something manually by hand. I use the brush tool, shortcut is B, and yeah, with a very low opacity, and I will draw something black in here. That's okay. And I will just add another white line here for the cars to stop. Not 100, maybe 88 or something. And the line will be over here. Yeah, that's okay. So if you zoom in, it looks terrible, but you always have to keep in mind no one looks at the image like this. If you print it out and have it on plans, no one uses a big lens to go there and watch the pixels of the image. You can press Ctrl and 0 to have the zoom level on the whole picture, and from this point of view it looks quite okay. You can see that I used the clone stamp, but you won't see it if you haven't watched this video. I'm sure about this. So I have to repeat this over here and here and a little bit off there. Before I forget, I will start here. Same procedure. Okay, I can go back to 100. And that's okay. Yes, I know I'm using 100 right now, but that's really okay. That isn't quite easy. You have to play around a lot to get a quite acceptable or decent result. Oh shit. Again, I'm working with the brush tool. That's okay. And I'm using white again. If you're absolutely unsatisfied with it, just a tip or a trick, place a car over here at the end and no one will see this. But that's okay. Like I said, zoom out, look at the picture. No one will recognize this area, or will recognize that we draw there something by hand. Okay, here I only have to move this part a little bit in this edge, and I can use the the smudge tool. Where do I find it? Here it is. The smudge tool to do it. Maybe more like this. Yeah. No. Doesn't look very good. But I use the white brush again. I'm using a gray brush again. Even a darker gray. Then I'm going to white again. Make it smaller. Okay, I'm fine with it. So here we have to add something. Clone stamp. 100%. A little bit smaller. And that's fine. Okay, after we added our streets, we still have to add the bicycle lanes, these streets here, and the parking spots. Maybe I can use this kind of gravel for the two streets over here. Same thing. If they're seamless or not, I don't care, because gravel is some kind of texture which is not very exact, if you know what I mean. You just can overlay the textures and merge them without erasing or smoothing the edges. Especially not at this scale. You won't see it in any way. Okay, make sure it's over all the textures, over all the places, sorry. Select them, that's wrong. This one and this one. Invert the selection, press delete, same thing every time, and this quite looks okay. Oh, I forgot that I have to add some concrete here, here and here. And I think I will use the concrete texture for parking spots too. And I forgot some green over here, okay. I select the spot and I go back on the green layer, and I will use the clone stamp from over here with 100%. And it's done. So next thing will be concrete. Actually, I like this texture a lot. Use it very often. but most times on facades and buildings and not in a master plan rendering. But there's always a first time. Same thing here. I will put it over the whole image. Stretch it because the texture is irregular. Yeah, it has some very, very attracting marks in here. But the spaces are so small, I don't think anyone would see that. Okay, go back on your landscape or base layer and select all the parts where you want to have your texture at. Think this is all, and now we make it visible again, invert the selection and delete it back again. Okay, last texture. Last texture is the cycling lane. What do I use for the cycling lane? That's quite difficult. Like I said before, I like to add a red color, but I can do it in Photoshop with a color overlay, or I'm using a red texture from the beginning. Maybe something rusty, but it's probably unrealistic. But yes, I will do it. Why not? We are using cycling lanes made out of corten steel. Maybe someday in Dubai. As I just duplicated and looked at, it's covering all the white spaces there. Turning, we are transforming, Control and T, if anyone is asking himself right now. Go back on the landscape, select all of the cycling lanes, and there it is. Okay, that was the step 1. Just add some names to our layers. Cycling lanes are orange. Concrete is violet. The gravel is... We don't have a color which isn't used. Yellow. The buildings. It's okay. It's just for separating two layers that are next to each other. And of course, I will upload the PSD file for you so you can download it for free. And you can use it, you can rebuild it, whatever you like. If I'm done with this video. Okay, what are we doing next? Next thing is editing the textures so it fits together. I will start with the grass because grass is quite easy, and in my opinion and my experience, the grass is probably the texture which could add the most part of realistic or the most part of dynamic to your image, especially if you have a park or something else where you have a big part of grass in your image. So what I do first is desaturating the grass. I use the saturation and hue filter from Photoshop, and I go onto saturation, make sure I'm using it only on the grass layer, and I put the saturation down. I will put the brightness a little bit up, and I move the tone or the color a little bit to the left to add a little bit more green or yellow to the color. Put the saturation up again, a little bit to the right, and there's no, you cannot say, okay, you always have to put it to -5, -26, +11. It's always different. You always have to look, and it's always your decision. If you say, okay, that looks decent, leave it like this. Okay, I will group them together with Ctrl and G. That's my grass group. Make it green again. And now I will do something else on the grass layer directly, which is called dodge and burn. Photographers know it, of course. You will find it here. The shortcut is O. And we will start by burning the grass. We select the middle tones, not the lights, not the dark ones, and 2 is a little bit too low, maybe 15, or let's say 10%. And we randomly go with a very smooth brush over our textures. Like you see, it's getting brighter. If you will add some dynamic to it, you can use one of these both tools when you go with the direction where you want to put the dynamic in. So as you can see, the dynamic in this image is coming from over here to here and here to here, which is almost the same direction. So make sure when you're using dodge and burn that you're always going in this direction. You would destroy the image if you're using it this way. So I'll make it very, very rough. I'm using a very big brush in this case. You could zoom in and work on it in detail if you like. Just make the edge a little bit brighter or this. Yeah. Just play a little bit around. If you're finished with burning, you can dodge the same thing. Middle tones, 10%, that's always good. And I also go over the burnt areas, because you will create a very cool, oh that's too much, very cool gradient or new green tones if you're going over the areas where you burned again with the dodge tool. Now I think everything overall seems a little bit too dark, and I will go over the dark areas with the burn tool again. So the grass texture doesn't look like it was at the beginning at all. Here I'm going so often over the texture that it almost disappears, which I love in these renderings. I'll do this a little bit more. Put the brightness up. but also have some dark highlights. That's quite okay. Adds a little bit more realism, because grass always have different shades of green, shadows and lights. And we also will do the same thing with our pavement. We can burn and we can burn it first and dodge it first, and then we can add the color and the saturation after we're finished. That doesn't make any difference. Okay, we burned it. Now let's make it darker. In this area where the tables are, it probably would be a little bit darker because there are more people. And it's very important to zoom in and zoom out, so when you're zoomed in you don't see these stripes, which are actually are not looking very good. We don't have any shadow in here, so I think we have to draw it by ourselves. That's something I forgot to export from ArchiCAD. I could have drawn some shadow lines. Of course, this will add a lot of realism. But yeah, there are two other ways, but I will show you after we've finished all the textures. Let's group it. That was one too much. Okay, I haven't corrected it. No filter here. I will play a little bit around. I will make it brighter. Or maybe darker. No, brighter is better, so I won't see the stripes anymore. Okay, saturation doesn't matter. It's gray. Group it. It's pavement. Pavement is gray. And let's go on with the next texture, which will be first. Well, let's make the water at last. Let's edit the streets first. They are very, very dark in this case. Might be very realistic, but we have such a bright pavement, or such bright pavements over here. So I think we should desaturate it, or that's the wrong word, because it doesn't have color. We will make it a little bit brighter. Maybe like this. Yeah, that's quite nice. I like it. And I do not dodge and burn the streets, because the texture we used in here was very, very detailed. We have some irregular shapes here and some dark areas, some lighter areas, some different textures. And that's good for realism. So we don't need to dodge and burn it anymore. You could do it if you like, of course, but I won't do it here. Okay, the gravel, I won't dodge and burn it either, but yeah, maybe I will add a little bit of color to it, because it's it doesn't look very different from the next texture. And this is what I do not like, because you won't see it. So I will add a little bit of brown reddish tone, just like in here. For this I will create a new layer. I will select all the pixels where I draw gravel on, or where the gravel is existing on, with clicking onto this miniature picture, holding Control down. You see the cursor changes, click in here, and you only have these areas. Yes. Okay, I will press G for the color bucket and select a color like this, fill it, and now I can work with maybe overlay, but I think, yeah, that's too much. Or I will work with overlay. Oh, smooth light, white, smooth light, I think it's called. Looks a little bit better, and I will put the opacity down. Yeah, I'm quite fine with it. Color correction. Just make a new group. It's gravel. I think it was yellow. Okay. Yeah, next thing is concrete, which actually is too much detailed. And I like to have the concrete as the darkest parts over here, even darker than the street. And it's very brown in here, so I will desaturate it. And I will make it a little bit darker. Maybe like this. I don't need to desaturate if it's so dark. So it's creating a good contrast between these two materials. I don't like it in here. Yeah, on the parking spots it could be like it was, a little bit brighter, so I'm using the mask here, clicking on the mask of the filter, selecting a normal brush and drawing with 100% opacity and the black color over the parking areas. And I'm fine with that. No, I'm not, because this is what is disturbing me. Yeah, maybe I'm adding a new layer, and I'm drawing with a gray tone over the parking spots. I click in here to select it, delete it, and I just lower the opacity. So this is what it looks like without the gray, and the gray just puts some of the texture away. 60%, it's okay, but I have to draw in yellow lines again, because they are vanished right now. The yellow lines, the white lines. For this I have to zoom in. I select white and I will draw some lines. Just with shift painting, holding shift down, you can always draw some straight lines. Click on the first point and on the last point. Yeah, that looks a lot better. sometimes I render those images. I build the whole scenery in ArchiCAD and I just render it from a top view as isometric perspective. Then I also add cars and people and bicycles and stuff like this. And the good thing about rendering is that the shadows are there and they are correct and not missing, like in this case. Okay. Concrete, purple, violet, whatever. Okay, last texture to edit is the river, which is way too blue right now. So I pull the blue back. I don't know if yes, I think it should be quite dark. So that's okay for now. And I will add another water texture if I find a decent one. Hopefully, yeah, some texture with waves to add a little bit more realism to it. I think I will take this one. And I rasterize it. I will overlay it. And I will put opacity down from the layer underground. Oh, but first I have to cut it away. I also lower the opacity of this one here. And I will merge them together. I'm not very satisfied with this, to be honest. Yeah, both layers were not at 100% opacity, so this one is half transparent. I will add another one, maybe this one. That's way too blue, but we'll see. Yeah, I think this could work. Rasterize, cut it away, and overlay. Smooth light, and again lower the opacity. Does nearly make no difference. Just playing around with the layer modes. I think I keep it normal. Yeah, that's quite better. I merge them together again. And now I put the saturation way down. I make it a little bit darker. And not even a saturation down, I would change it to a little bit more green tone. Maybe like this. Yeah, that's okay. I will merge them together too, and I will burn and dodge this texture, or maybe only dodge. this texture on the edge. Because it will be a little bit darker on the exact edge, but then it's brighter here than here, I think. So I will make it darker here too. Oh, that was way too much. Just touch it here in the edge a little bit, and that's okay. Yeah, so we're done with the textures. No, we're not. The cycle lanes are missing and they are way too red. So we will put down saturation a little bit and make it brighter. Something like this. That's okay. Group it. Cycling lane and make it orange. Okay. Now we're done. So it doesn't look very realistic at all. What is missing? There are a lot of things still missing. Like the shadows, the trees, cars, people. And what I want to do first is add some grunch effects. I love grunch effects. I love grunch maps, overlaying them because it simply looks good. And I like to add these grunch effect across the pavement or across the concrete. Maybe I use 2 maps. One for each of the textures. So I go back into my collection using some grunch maps, and I like this one here. Just lines. You can create it in Photoshop very quickly by yourself. And these will, of course, support the dynamics of the whole image. So I think I will overlay them on the concrete, on the pavement. Sorry. Select the pavement, blend it in, and delete it. And now I overlay it, which is very, very strong. I will put down the opacity. I also could use another blend mode, but I think that looks quite cool, yes. I'm very happy with that. Okay, here, this is not the same direction like here, but it's okay. I will have the strong dynamic from here to there. Exactly what I wanted. And maybe I use the same texture on the concrete, but in a 90-degree angle to this one. Let's try. Maybe it looks good, maybe not. You don't know if you haven't tried. Okay, same thing again. Go on the concrete. Hold Control down, press in a miniature picture. Press Control, Shift and I. Press Delete. Oh. Now press Delete. Overlay and lower the opacity, and it actually looks quite okay. Yeah. I think I will leave it like this. But I will delete it on the parking spots with the eraser tool. Yeah, that's okay. I'm quite satisfied with it. Okay, next thing before we add some people and trees, we like to add some shadow to the whole scenery. So I will group them. Grunch is maybe orange. No. Then grunch is blue. And we're going back to our buildings. We will add them to the top because they're always on top. That's the first thing you can see. If you have drawn the attics of the buildings, you could have made grass texture on it. I didn't make it at this example. I thought about adding some names over here, like the building is called, or the name of the street and the number of the street. But in this scale, probably what will look cool is having your floor plan inside of here, a very schematic floor plan. I think this would be cool. I don't have it because I drew this whole plan in 5 minutes, and it's fictional. What you also can do, if your plan is bigger than this, you always can use Google Maps or Google Earth photos, satellite photos, to add some actual real environment to it, like trees or cars, streets, and this will look very good when you have your own buildings, your own design in here, and the all surrounding will be actually from a satellite photo from a real existing environment. So you have this extreme contrast of this super realism and your new created stuff, and the people who will watch this image will see immediately what is new and what is old, and I think that's a good idea. Okay. The building. I have two different levels. I have the houses and I have these small edges, the small corners. So for this I will renew the layer. I just erase everything in here. So the layer is blank, and I will go on the landscape layer again, magic wand. First I only pick the big buildings, the actual building, the blocks, whatever. Oh, there's a corner. No, it will stay white. And I will add white color to it. I will create another layer. I will put it underground. Buildings 2, which is orange. And I select all the lower parts. And fill them with white too. I hope they are filled with white, because I don't see it here. Maybe we can try it with gray. Yes, okay. It worked. And okay, shadows. The best thing you can do, of course, like I told you, is building the whole 3D scenery. Could be very, very schematic. You can pull up morphs or make it in SketchUp. SketchUp is way faster than Archicad in this case. And you can render it from a top view. Don't matter in which program. So you have all the shadows, which saves you a lot of time. Because if you have to draw the shadow lines in your cut program by hand, the first thing is it will take a lot of time, and the second thing is for sure you will make mistakes, and for sure there are points where you think, holy crap, what am I doing here and how do I have to draw the shadow? The shadow does fall on some areas which are higher than others and you don't know how it will look like for real. A very quick solution, which I show you right now, is just using the shadow of Photoshop by right-clicking on the layer, and the first option is your layer style. And in the layer styles you find this point, which is a shadow, and in this case the sun will come from up here. Doesn't matter right now. We have not defined where north or south is. Just can play a little bit around. It's good when the shadows are inside of these inner building areas, and if there are some cases where the shadow comes over these white things and it's way too strong. So we lower the opacity. Okay, the good thing about it is extremely quick. You just press 3 buttons, or you make 3 clicks. The bad thing about it is this. It actually is not a real shadow of a building. The building is flying here. It's not very realistic, but if you don't have enough time, or if you actually really do not know how to draw a shadow or render a shadow which is realistic, you can do it, and I think most of the people won't recognize it if they're standing in front of a plan looking at this, and you see the shadow, you see the difference which a shadow makes. This doesn't look very good. Tack, realism, little bit of realism, and that's why you always need shadows. There are people, which I told at the very beginning of this tutorial video, who are creating these plans without shadows because they like it very subtle and very schematic, very simple. I don't like it because you see you see how mighty shadow is. Okay, I will do the same thing with buildings too, with the smaller buildings, but in this case I will make the shadow a little bit smaller. More like this. And that's okay. And I also see these points. I don't know what I thought when I was drawing it, but maybe I could add some shadows there too. Let's make it gray. Go in the landscape area, and I will like to have shadows here, like to have shadows here. Just add a little bit more realism. And I think I also have to select all these parts. I know that the shadow will fall down, so I don't select this one. Yeah, that's okay. I will select it, and then I will pull the buildings on top, or the shadows underneath the buildings, so you won't see the shadow on the building anymore. So I have to fill these areas with... That's a good question. Actually, I can't use this shadow in this case, because if I pick a color and make it white or something else, the textures are gone. I can pull the opacity down, but the shadows will go down with it too. So I will make it black. And I will move the whole layer a little bit over here. Something like this. And now I will pull it on top of the pavement and on top of the trees. On top of the grass, sorry. But underneath all the rest. Yes, that's okay. Forgot something here. It's okay, and I think I have to select these points here once again and create another new layer. But first I will put the opacity of this layer just down. So we have a shadow. That's okay. I will pick these points up again. One table or one chair will be very tall, very big. I don't care right now. New layer. Fill it with white. And that's it. White overlay. And the shadows are here. I forgot this one, so I can duplicate it. I use the arrow keys to move it. And these 5 should be a little bit longer. Maybe these are very high pillars or something else. So I select them. Or I just added one of them. I will erase them. That's the first step. Where does it come from? Okay. I erase the shadows here. And I will draw a new one or new ones here. Just add black color. Duplicate them. Move them around. And put the opacity a little bit more down. Okay. 36. Merge them together. That's okay. Shadows. I always spell it wrong or write it wrong. Shadows. That's okay. English is hard. Okay, I have my fake shadow everywhere, looks quite okay, and now I think I will edit some cars and then trees, and then we're done. I won't add people right now. It's the same way as adding cars. Maybe I don't add cars. Okay. Let's look. I'm not sure if I have cars right now. There are vehicles, top view cars. Okay, I have a couple of them. I will add this Kia Ultima. First of all, this color has to go. Zoom in. Make it quite realistic from its size. Something like this. Okay. Copy it. If you have more time, you can add more different cars. Oh, I think it's quite too big. Yeah, probably is too big. It's okay, I will add one different car, maybe in another color. The red one won't be very cool because it will stick out of the whole image. Also the yellow one, so I will choose this Subaru Outback. Isn't there a PNG file? No. This Passat. Rasterize. Okay. Make it small. If you have enough time, you can add as many cars as you like. So I will group them. Cars are green. And I will lower the opacity a little bit. I know that's unrealistic, but they seem to be too strong in this image if they are on high capacity. So I'll lower it a little bit, maybe 80, 85, that's okay. So they are not that attracting in this image. They are decent in the background, that's okay. Okay, and the last thing, well, not exactly the last thing, but maybe one of the most important things. The trees. Just go into the internet and look for some license-free textures for top view trees. Top down, okay. And you can use more than one if you like. It always looks cooler, but in this case, I will just use this one here. And you see it has a bright and a dark side, so the sun does come from this side. In our case, the sun does come from here. So I will turn it to the sun. That's the first step. And now We'll make it a little bit smaller. And before I make it so small that I could just play around on the plan, I will add a shadow. For this, I duplicate the layer with Ctrl and J. I go on the layer which is not on top, on the second layer, and I tell the layer that I want a color overlay, not white, I want black. And I press V for moving, and I move it a little bit with the shadows, maybe like this. I will put the opacity down to, you have to look, it's always different, maybe 45%. Does work very well. And after I finished that, I merge them together. But if you merge them together, you can't add the shadow anymore, and you can add the colors, but you always have to remember that you will edit the colors of the shadow too. So before I do that, I will make a color correction only on the first layer. Put the saturation way down. I will make it a little bit more green, not green, a little bit more yellow or reddish. I will put the brightness a little bit up. I will put the saturation a little bit up again. Maybe like this, that's quite okay. And now I will merge all the layers together to one layer. That's my tree. And now I just make it small. That wasn't good. And yes, of course, it looks way cooler if you have more than one tree. And now I see that the shadow is way too strong, which is not cool. So I go back some steps and maybe this is better. Merging it together again, tree, make it green, press Ctrl and T for transforming to make it smaller, and you always start with the biggest trees. If you know, okay, the biggest trees are here and here, you start with them, because if you merge together the layers and you rasterize it, you have to keep in mind that the image or the layer will, you will see the pixels if you scale it up. So try to not scale it up at any point. Always scale it down. So in this case I say this is my biggest tree, and I will duplicate it, and I will add the big trees everywhere where they should stand. After that I will scale it down and add some smaller trees. Most times I'm using 3 or 4 different sizes of trees. Depends on how much time you have, and maybe you have to use real trees, I don't know. So these are the big ones. The next one will be my medium tree. In this case I will use 3 sizes. And always press Ctrl and G, then press V for moving. Take the mouse, move it over where you like to have it. The next one will be my small tree. and repeat it every time. Okay, that's okay. Now we have some trees, we have some cars, we have some grunch maps, we have all the textures. First of all, I group them. These are the trees. Last thing, or one of the last things, is adding some text. Like I said, I like to, before I do that, some people like to lower the opacity of the trees. You can do that if you like. Sometimes trees are laying or lying over some structures that you want to show, so you can lower opacity, maybe like this, so you have 75%. And now I will add some text. It's maybe some street names which look most times quite cool if you have them laying on the streets. So I just choose Arial and I don't know, Waterfront Avenue. That's quite small. That's way too big. Maybe 10 point, and I don't use Arial, I will use Bebas because I like it a lot. Make it a little bit smaller. That's good, but might look cooler if it's white and if the opacity isn't 100%. Yeah, looks better. And you can repeat that on the other streets. This is the... oh, I don't know. This is... the Sesame Street. It's bicycle road. And we have our tree lane. Okay, looks a little bit better right now. Last thing, of course, what I forgot is a north arrow, which would be looking very cool over here, or maybe a title over here in the blue of the river. But what I want to try is how it looks like if I add some text on the buildings. In this case, I will make it black. maybe a little bit smaller than the streets. And lower opacity again. Yeah, I think it's quite a cool idea. And that's the Qreative home. Complex. I'm very sorry, my recording software stopped automatically because my hard drive was full. Luckily, it was quite at the end. I just added some more street names and a title, that's it. And in a PSD file, I added another layer on top with a filter from Topaz, which I use often. And you can download it for free. I hope this video was useful or helpful for you. You learned something, and I hope it was not too boring. And stay creative and have a great day.